Loki just changed everything we know about time travel in the MCU. Welcome back to Nerdist News, you merry Marvel mavens. I'm Kyle Anderson, and today we're going to be talking about the Season 2 premiere of Disney Plus's Marvel's Loki. Specifically, we're talking about the huge revelations and major implications of the way time works, or doesn't work, in the TVA. It turns out it's much more like Back to the Future 2 than we first thought.
Oh, this is heavy.
If you'd like to read more about it, Michael Walsh has you covered over on Nerdist.com. But before we get into Zemeckis paradoxes, we want to throw a big ol' spoiler warning up there for you. So if you haven't seen Loki Season 2 Episode 1, go on and take a Biff tangent. You know, make like a tree and get out of here.
It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong.
All right then, leave!
Still with us? Fantastic. 4? No, still no. Let's get into it, shall we? It feels like years since we last spent time with Loki, Mobius, Sylvie, and the members of the TVA, but in a lot of ways, it's only been a couple of hours. Such is the nature of television, but it turns out such is also the nature of time within the Time Variance Authority. It appeared as though Sylvie's decision to kill He Who Remains upended the entire universe and all of time itself. Worse, it seemed Kang the Conqueror or one of his variants had risen to power amid all the upheaval and installed some very tasteful and understated statues. But the show's Season 2 premiere revealed that that was not actually what happened. Loki didn't end up in a new TVA with Kang ruling everything. He ended up in the exact same TVA, just years in the past. How? Why? When? Also who and where?
What?
The answer to some of these questions is time slipping and temporal looms. The Season 2 premiere clarified what actually happened in the show's Season 1 finale. The murder of He Who Remains did not reset the TVA, time itself, or the multiverse. His death did not cause anything that dramatic, at least not yet. It will happen at some point because without He Who Remains having the TVA tend his temporal garden, new timelines will shoot up like weeds. More on that in a bit. When Sylvie kicked Loki through the time door, he went to the same TVA's own past.
Look, Renslayer kicked me down some steps too.
That's why Mobius and B-15 don't recognize him.
What?
That's also why Loki saw statues of He Who Remains. Earlier in the TVA's history, He Who Remains did not hide his identity behind robot timekeepers. RIP to those guys.
Are you seeing this? Robot head on the table?
Anyway, Loki thinks he might have ended up in the past because Sylvie opened that time door with He Who Remains' special tempad. But as far as Loki or any of the TVA members knew, there was no time in the TVA. Welp, to quote a Thompson Twins song, lies, 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 yeah. New character Ouroboros, aka OB, played amazingly by Oscar winner Ke Kwan, seems to be the one person with knowledge of how the operations of the TVA actually works. He also can't believe time slipping is a real thing, and yet he sees it with his own eyes. OB thinks many timelines branching following He Who Remains' death and the subsequent overloading of the temporal loom might be responsible. It's possible one, both, or neither contributed to Loki getting ripped across time in the TVA's past, present, and future. Time slipping looks pretty darn painful, as Mobius and Random Elevator Lady tell us, and it's none too pleasant for Loki either.
It's not that bad. I can handle it.
How does it look?
But what it does provide is some context for just how many secrets the man who would be Kang was keeping. Remember, the whole raison d'etre for the TVA was to keep time from branching, to keep variants from forming, and to keep a single sacred timeline flowing. It has much less to do with most variants existing. It's instead entirely about keeping more Kangs from popping up. But as we see in Quantumania, it's Kangs all the way down. Loki listens to an old recording while trapped in the TVA's past. It features He Who Remains speaking to Ravonna Renslayer. On the tape, He Who Remains says, "For us, for all time." She answers, "Always." He Who Remains then says, "Ravonna Renslayer, you are quite a marvel. I will be proud to lead with you. You made a difference in this war. Thank you for being on my team." This is a huge, huge deal. During Season 1 of Loki, Renslayer did not know about He Who Remains.
Is that what you're calling him, or that's his name? That's how I was introduced.
Pretty arrogant. It's like calling yourself last man standing.
Clearly, though, she once knew him quite well. She not only fought for He Who Remains in the multiversal war, she was marked to co-lead the TVA with him. At some point after that conversation, He Who Remains must have wiped the memories of Renslayer and everyone else at the TVA. Loki assumes He Who Remains must have wiped TVA employees' minds more than once. None of them remembered the prominent He Who Remains paraphernalia that once adorned the organization.
I have no memory of having my memory wiped.
He only proved it to them by taking X5's pruning baton and literally showing them the man behind the curtain. Present-day Casey also had no memory of how the floor got cracked, despite being there when Loki did his best Yamcha impression. At least one mind wipe happened after Loki showed up in the past, which is why none of them remembered meeting him there.
What?
And Mobius also did not fully remember visiting OB 400 years prior.
400 years.
What? Feels like 1,000.
Let's talk a little bit more about OB. OB is the lone employee of the TVA's Research and Development Division. He also wrote the TVA guidebook and is the expert of the device currently holding everything together. As though Kihei Kwan couldn't be any more delightful, Ouroboros is funny without knowing he's funny.
Yes, because then I stayed for a little bit. He took me over.
No, he left immediately.
The scenes of OB talking to Loki in the past and Mobius in the present are some of the most enjoyable of the episode. And more than that, they also give us some key info on the type of time travel we're dealing with. Unlike what the character said in Avengers Endgame, the TVA's time travel rules do work like Back to the Future. Going back in time changes the present. During a time slip, Loki gives OB the info to make a temporal aura extractor, the exact thing they need in the present to stop Loki's predicament. This means causal loops are a thing that can happen, which is very fitting for a show with characters named Mobius and Ouroboros. Look those things up if you don't know what they are. But more than that, it proves that time and specifically the lives of variants can be written how they want. Despite the Sacred Timeline's countless branches sprouting with the death of He Who Remains, the entire multiverse has yet to collapse. The temporal loom is barely keeping the multiverse from exploding, but it is doing it. That device is the heart of the TVA. It refines raw time into a physical timeline. It's not constructed to weave together so many branches though, so it's overloading. To keep the TVA itself safe from that impending blowup, OB needs to lock everything down and close the blast doors. But first Loki needs to access the temporal loom to save himself. At great personal risk to his own skin, Mobius attaches the extractor to the temporal loom. When someone or something then prunes Loki, violently ripping him from every strand of time and space, it sends him out of time. The extractor then pulls him into the present where he crashes into Mobius, sending them both behind the safety of the blast doors before they close. So now Loki is back where he ought to be, in the TVA's present along with Mobius, B-15, and the other TVA agents who don't want to prune timelines anymore. It seems they don't need to if OB can get the loom working properly. Unfortunately, not everyone sees it that way. General Dox, Hunter X5, and her band of armed Minutemen don't want to be the fruit of that particular loom and set out to do something nefarious. It seems they're just going out to get Sylvie, but B-15 rightly notices there's way too much firepower for that task alone. And what of Sylvie? Where's she been in all this? Well, the episode's mid-credit scene gives us our answer. Using He Who Remains' tempad, she arrives in the middle of Broxton, Oklahoma, 1982, branched timeline. Conveniently, right next to the house of one Mr. Ronald McProduct placement. This location is significant too. In 2007's Thor #2, the God of Thunder transports Asgard to Broxton, Oklahoma, and it became their new home on Midgard. Unfortunately, it was also destroyed years later by the elder god known as the God of Hammers, who obliterated Broxton to get back at Thor. After going in and looking at the menu, Sylvie tells the employees she wants to try everything. What better metaphor for being nobody's puppet with your whole life ahead of you than getting everything off of that gargantuan menu? Presumably, we'll see more of Sylvie in future episodes, but maybe not. Maybe she's just gonna hang out at the Golden Arches and let Loki deal with the time shenanigans. Maybe she'll drink the Grimace Shake, which is basically the McDonald's version of Eliath.
Glorious purpose!
But we think likely not. Remember, during Loki's time slipping, he arrives in front of a TVA elevator. Sylvie, with a new haircut, manually opens the doors and says, "There you are," right as someone or something prunes him in order for Mobius to save him. If she's expecting Loki at some point in the TVA's future, that must also mean it's in store for our future. And we still have a number of other questions. Who recorded He Who Remains in Renslayer? Did he do it Richard Milhouse Nixon style? Who pruned Loki? Who's on the phone?
Make it make sense.
But that's all for future installments. I, for one, am just thrilled Loki is back, and it's still the same funny, touching, mind-bending show it was way back in 2021. Where it'll go from here, only time will tell. For now, though, tell us. What did you think of Loki's Season 2 premiere? Do you think we've seen the last of Renslayer? Will Miss Minutes give us another terrifying jump scare?
Hey, y'all!
God, it gets me every time. Let us know in the comments below, and while I have you, did you know that Nerdist has a weekly pop culture deep dive podcast called Laser Focus? I did because I host it as well. Each week, I sit down with a different guest to geek out about everything from Doctor Who to classic Power Rangers to Giallo horror and much more. Make sure you check out Laser Focus wherever fine podcasts are served. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching as always, and for more of the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, keep it glued to Nerdist.com.